All right, so you guys wanted us to really get into Michael Knowles' take on abortion in the Satanic Temple, and let me tell you, diving into this research, whoa, some serious logical fallacies jumped out at us, like red flags everywhere. You know those arguments that sound all smart and convincing at first, but then when you actually look closer, they fall apart.
Yeah, it's like a magician's trick, all smoke and mirrors. They use misdirection to pull your attention away from what's really going on. And Knowles' main argument, like connecting pro-choice stuff you see on TikTok directly to the Satanic Temple's views on abortion, total misdirection.
He's going straight for that correlation does not equal causation, classic.
Oh, 100%. And it's everywhere. Politics, advertising, you name it. It's all about making you think that if two things happen at the same time, boom, one caused the other. In this case, he's saying some TikTokers and the Satanic Temple, they both support abortion rights. So, bam, there's got to be some shady link there. That's like saying, hold on, I love a good documentary, and so does my dentist. So my dentist is secretly me.
Okay, I see what you mean. Two things can totally be on the same side without some big conspiracy. So how does Knowles try to prove this claim? He doesn't just throw it out there and walk away, does he?
No, he brings up the Satanic Temple using the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, the RFRA. They use it to protect abortion rights. And he's saying that proves his point.
Okay, time for a quick law lesson, I think, because RFRA, what is that exactly, and how does it fit into all of this?
So RFRA, it's been around since '93. And basically, it's there to stop the government from messing with someone's religious freedom. Unless, and this is key, unless the government has a really, really good reason. Think back to that baker a few years ago, the one who wouldn't bake a cake for a same-sex wedding.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was the whole thing.
He used the RFRA, said his religion, then he couldn't do it. Now, put aside how you feel about that specific case for a second. What it shows us is that RFRA protects all kinds of religious practices, even the ones that not everyone agrees with.
Gotcha. So the Satanic Temple's using it as a legal tool to argue for their right
Bodily autonomy, and here's where it gets really interesting.
to make their own decisions about their bodies. And that includes whether or not to have an abortion.
Yeah, exactly. They're saying respecting bodily autonomy, that's part of their religious beliefs. And if they were forced to carry a pregnancy to term, well, that would violate those beliefs, the ones they hold sincerely. Now, you might agree, you might disagree with how they see religious freedom or their stance on abortion. That's a whole other thing. But it's important to get what legal framework they're using, you know?
Totally adds another layer to this whole thing, because then Knowles goes on to say this bodily autonomy argument, it's flawed, and he compares it to things like, and I'm reading directly from his thing here, child pornography, suicide, drug use.
Okay, so right there, that's a classic false equivalency fallacy. He's putting these totally different things side by side with abortion as if they're basically the same. And when you actually look at it, that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, even when I first heard it, I was like, hold up, those don't seem like the same thing at all.
They're not. There are specific reasons why we regulate or ban those activities, mainly because they can directly hurt other people or they have big consequences for society. The legal and ethical stuff around those issues, it's completely different from abortion. Abortion is about the rights and autonomy of the person who's pregnant. It's not just this my body, my choice free pass for anything.
So there's definitely more to it than that. How do we even figure out where the lines are?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Bodily autonomy is important, but it's not absolute. There are limits. We have laws and ethical stuff to think about. The state can step in if what you're doing puts other people at risk. I mean, that's why we have laws against assault, right? With abortion, a lot of it comes down to this question of fetal personhood. When does a fetus have the same rights as a person outside the womb?
And that's something people have been debating for centuries.
Exactly. It's not simple at all. You've got religious beliefs, moral beliefs, philosophy, science, all mixed in there. And it's worth remembering that different countries, they've made different decisions about those lines. It reflects their own culture and what they value as a society. But instead of recognizing how complex it is, Knowles uses these false equivalencies. It's like he's trying to shut down the whole conversation.
Trying to make it black and white when it's anything but.
Yeah, and that actually leads us to another thing Knowles brings up, this idea of do what thou wilt. He makes it sound like it's all about just doing whatever you want, pure hedonism. And he connects to those TikTokers we were talking about, and then to Satanism. Like, it's all one big slippery slope to a life of misery.
Which, when you actually think about it, is a pretty big jump to make.
It really is, and it just shows how taking things out of context can be so misleading. You know, that phrase, do what thou wilt, people usually associate that with Aleister Crowley. And with Thelema, that spiritual philosophy he developed in the early 1900s. But it's not about just indulging yourself without any thought for others, like Knowles is implying. It's more nuanced than that. It's about taking responsibility for yourself and your actions, and making sure those actions line up with your true will.
So it's less about anything goes and more about knowing what you believe in and living by those beliefs.
Exactly. It's about figuring out what really matters to you, how you want to impact the world, and then living a life that reflects those principles. And that could mean being incredibly kind and compassionate, volunteering, fighting for social justice, even just being a good neighbor.
Things that don't exactly fit with the picture Knowles is painting.
Exactly. And that's the danger. When we oversimplify these complex ideas, boiling them down to sound bites, it stops us from having those nuanced, thoughtful discussions that we need, especially with topics like abortion, which are so emotionally charged.
Because, like, he's using that shock value to get attention.
Yeah.
Right? Throw these extreme interpretations out there, but don't really get into what the ideas actually mean.
Yeah, it's a common tactic and not a good one because it feeds into this bigger pattern with Knowles's argument. He keeps presenting his own worldview, especially his religious beliefs, as if they're universal truths, and that's just not how it works.
Yeah, exactly. Like when he says true freedom means aligning your will with God's will, I'm sitting there like, whoa, hold on. That's a specific religious belief, not some objective fact that everyone believes.
Exactly, and it's something we really have to watch out for, especially with information flying around as fast as it does these days. It's one thing to have your own beliefs, religious or otherwise, but it's another to say, those are the only right ones, the only way to see the world.
It's like saying, well, my favorite color is blue, which means everyone must see the sky as blue.
Right.
It completely ignores that people have different experiences, different beliefs.
Yeah, right. And that can be really harmful, especially with something as sensitive as abortion. We have to be able to talk about these things with empathy, realizing people have different backgrounds and beliefs.
Couldn't agree more. So bringing it back to the original request that got us here, it seems like Knowles is trying to create this chain reaction. Support abortion rights. Boom, you're aligning with a satanic agenda, embracing hedonism, and it all leads to misery. But like we've been talking about, each link in that chain is shaky, right? Built on these logical fallacies, these misleading interpretations.
Exactly. And what's important for you listening is to be able to spot those fallacies, whether it's correlation versus causation, those false equivalencies, appealing to emotions. If you can recognize those tactics, it helps you cut through the noise and think critically, no matter what you're looking at.
Like having a built-in BS detector, super useful these days.
Absolutely. So when you hear something that makes you go, is that really true? Don't just let it slide. Dig a little deeper. Look for the evidence. See if there are other perspectives. And don't be afraid to question those assumptions.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Hopefully this deep dive gave you a more complete picture of what's being argued here and the tools to think critically about this complex issue. And hey, maybe this even sparks some new questions for you. Like, if the Satanic Temple's argument hinges on religious freedom, how's that going to play out as society changes? What even counts as a religious belief anyway? There's always more to explore, and we hope you keep that curiosity alive.
Because when it comes down to it, understanding these tough issues, it takes open minds, critical thinking, and a willingness to engage with different viewpoints. And that's something we could all use a little more of.
Couldn't agree more. Until next time, everyone, keep asking those great questions, and we'll keep diving deep with you.